Welcome to this video in the series Sustainability Bites, which looks at bite-sized bits of advice on issues that are key to most sustainability standards. This one's about a disputes process, which most standards require you to have. Most businesses can accept disputes in a number of areas, but there are some basic issues in dispute resolution, all of which require a process. In the sustainability certification world, there are two types of disputes. The disputes people might bring against you as a company, and then the disputes that you might bring against, for example, a certification body over an auditing decision. Now, we're mainly going to deal with the first type, but I will touch on the second type briefly at the end. In sustainability standards, the emphasis is obviously on trying to resolve the disputes, but compliance isn't necessarily based on that. It's more about following a genuine disputes resolution process, making a genuine attempt to resolve the process, but it does recognise that some disputes may be intractable or be motivated by other agendas. A disputes resolution is a formal process by which you're trying to find a resolution in a dispute between yourselves as a company and another party. Of course, disputes can happen at any point in your company's operations, and you've probably got a pretty shrewd idea of the areas that are the subject of disputes. So it's a good idea to try and list these, and also companies often run risk registers as well. That's a good place to start to determine what kind of disputes you might be dealing with. In your disputes process, you should be clear referencing these as to when they occur and when you use them in obviously developing disputes, and more importantly in avoiding disputes happening in the first place. In the process, you should nominate someone in the company who is the recipient of all disputes, so that there's a single person dealing with it who's obviously familiar with the system. In some cases of where the disputes are serious, the certification body also requires to be told about the dispute. From that point on, that person will be recording the dispute's progress and hopefully its resolution. I'm going to give you some examples of the things that should be in your disputes process, and I'm not saying that these are hard and fast, but they'll give you some ideas about the structure. The first is a question. How did this dispute come to our attention? Did the dispute come by phone or fax? Was it verbally or by some other method? Is the party an affected party or an interested party? Now, that's a very important concept, affected and interested parties. And if you go back to the sustainability bite we did on stakeholder communication, we define what those are. Did the complaint come to you directly from the complainant or through a third party, which sometimes happens? If it came through a third party, is that third party acting as a proxy for the complaint, in other words, representing them? For example, maybe a local authority got a complaint and passed it on. The idea of a third party giving you the complaint or raising the complaint as a proxy or on behalf of a complainant is quite common, and you've got to understand if that is representative of the fact the complainant feels uncomfortable talking directly to the company, maybe because of some imbalance of power or for some other reason. So you need to work out who you're talking to and how you're talking to them, directly or through a proxy. Regardless of how the complaint came to you, the clock starts ticking the minute you receive the complaint, and from that point on you need to record every bit of information or every step in the complaint as it happens until it's resolved. Again, I'll repeat that sometimes the complainant doesn't want to be known to the company or doesn't want to work through the company. They work through a proxy or a third party, and it's important that you work with that third party in good faith as if they were the complaining party. We've talked about the difference between an affected and an interested party. Often a dispute comes from an affected party, say a neighbour, when you're doing some sort of noisy or site disturbing activities and they've made a complaint, maybe a noise complaint. They're definitely an affected party. By contrast, the company is always an affected party. Sometimes there's no affected party. The complaint may come from, for example, a local group or an NGO or whatever. So if there's no identified affected party, the interested party who brings the complaints have all the rights of an affected party in the dispute. If there is a defined affected party and you do resolve the disputes between the parties, the dispute is resolved from the point of view of your procedure. If there is an affected party who maybe doesn't agree with the resolution, they cannot reopen it unless they frame their own dispute and come in as an affected party themselves. But that would be a different dispute. And regardless of who's bringing the dispute, once you've sorted that out, who they are, then you must go to the process and make every attempt to resolve the dispute in good faith. That's most important. The next thing to determine is what the dispute is about. Now, that seems to be obvious, but sometimes it's not that easy. In an earlier bite, we talked about stakeholder mapping. That's sometimes an interesting way and a valuable way of working out what the disputes or maybe some of the underlying issues in the disputes really are. Sometimes you might assume the dispute is about X, but when talking to the complainants or wider stakeholders, you find out that there are other issues and maybe the dispute isn't about that at all. Once you've done that, it's important to confirm with the other party or their proxy what we agree or they agree that the dispute is about. If you leave that open or unresolved, you basically open the door to the dispute being changed or some other issues being raised in the dispute. And we can deal with that as well later. What often happens is that a dispute is raised to you, and it's actually not about you at all. It's about somebody else or some other company, and you actually have no issue in that dispute, no standing. It's vitally important in those situations that you don't leave things hanging and say, well, this isn't about us. You must tell the complainant it's not about you and refer them to the people or body who it should be referred to, and make sure that they understand that. Otherwise, things will be left open and they'll feel the dispute is with you and it hasn't been resolved, it's just been ignored. In many cases, if you're proactive and follow a procedure, you can resolve a dispute very quickly and at the lowest possible level, and it is always the desired effect to resolve a dispute at the lowest possible level. That would be done by discussions between the parties. If that's not done at the lowest possible level, it can quickly escalate. Just one footnote here, and we've kind of brought this out in something like stakeholder mapping early on. There's no simple rule on who and how the dispute can be dealt with at the lowest possible level, and I would suggest that you give some thought to your approach in working out the best way to approach the matter and resolve it quickly. It may be that the complainant feels there's a power imbalance, so going in with top management people may not be have the desired effect. It may be that the complainant requires that probably the top management are the people trying to develop it to a resolution at the lowest possible level, because then they feel they're being taken seriously. You need to identify if the complainant feels afraid that there may be some action against them as a result of the complaint, and maybe ask them if they want to remain anonymous and work through a proxy. In any case, if you're going to have lawyers, keep them in the background. The optics of going into a dispute with lawyers always says power imbalance, and not necessarily says amicable resolution. Once the matter has been decided as to what the dispute is and whether it's an interested or affected party, those parties should be involved all the way through to the dispute's resolution. Or if they've got a proxy nominated, then we should be working with that proxy in good faith, again, all the way through to the dispute's resolution. Now, again, in an earlier bite, we talked about the issue of non-participation, and there may be reasons for non-participation. Have a look at that bite. It also talks about something called strategic non-participation, where at a certain point an organisation may say, well, we're not going to talk to you anymore because we don't want to be seen to be talking to you or give you any credibility. And often they think that this will preclude them from the company from being certified even. That's actually not the case, and in those cases you make several and strenuous attempts to engage, and you also keep a record of those attempts to engage and to show that you've been faithful to the process and always try to engage in good faith. And as I've said, there is a mistaken belief with some people that if a dispute is not resolved, or if their people refuse to resolve a dispute, then that's going to affect the company's certification. That's not true. Certification or compliance will be demonstrated in that case to the certification body by a genuine attempt to resolve the dispute. As long as you've got the evidence of how you did that and what the roadblocks were and why maybe the dispute broke down, that's the sort of thing they're looking for. Then a dispute resolution is not a condition of certification, but definitely an effort towards dispute resolution is a genuine effort. I'd like to talk now about a vitally important concept, which is called the principle of natural justice. That basically means hear what the other guy has to say and give them an opportunity to say it. It's vitally important in a dispute that both parties have an ability to be heard and have an ability to respond. All such responses should be recorded as part of the dispute. Natural justice, however, may not be a simple exchange. There may be responses and responses to the responses. All respondents must be given a chance to respond and maybe come back, and there may be several rounds of this. So be patient and record everything. For almost all disputes where a sustainability standard is involved, and especially disputes of a reasonable magnitude, you need to keep the certifier informed of the dispute when it breaks out, and also its progress, and obviously, hopefully, its resolution. Again, I repeat, it's important to do everything in good faith and record everything, even if the dispute may seem frivolous. Now I'd like to talk about if we're covering a dispute from the point of view of sustainability certification, what is the role of the certifier? So here are some basic guidelines. In some cases, the standards specifically require you to inform the certifier, especially if there are serious disputes. In such cases, you must keep the certifier informed, at least by presenting the progress or possible resolution of the dispute at the next audit. But it's important to make sure that the certifier understands the background in the dispute, especially if you feel the dispute is frivolous or vexatious, or has been raised by somebody requiring or trying to exert some leverage over the company. For example, I've been involved in disputes which were taken out by labour organisations who, in order to resolve the dispute, were requiring completely unrelated concessions to be made. For the certifiers also, this is difficult ground. Sometimes they might be asked to adjudicate in a dispute, and really that shouldn't happen, because there should be what's called a test of prior participation, where the complainant should attempt to raise and resolve the dispute with the company in the first instance, either directly or through a proxy. So if a company is asked to, certifier is asked to try and adjudicate on a dispute, the first thing that they should do is say, have you actually talked to the company about this? Now, I said right at the beginning that sometimes that you as a company may feel you have a dispute against the certification body, who may make an adjudication which they're not supposed to do, or refuse certification until certain things are done, or whatever. Then there is a disputes mechanism often within the certification standard for you to follow. And that is similar to what a complainant complaining about you would have. You'd have to obviously make your complaint to the certifying body, and then there would be a process of to and fro. But if that complaint is not satisfied, or if you feel the complaint, the dispute hasn't been satisfactorily resolved, you have recourse to complain to the accreditation body about or the standards body in some cases, about the conduct of the certifier. So there is a hierarchical thing, but most importantly, you must, going back to the principle of prior participation, if you've got a dispute with the certifier, raise it with them first. They should have their own disputes mechanism, their own complaints mechanism as part of their accreditation, so use that first. Now, if you can't resolve things at the lowest possible level, there is an entire discipline called alternate disputes resolution, things like mediation, facilitation and arbitration, and I'm not going to talk about that. That's a well-established framework that is used within the legal profession. You have recourse to it before going to the next stage, which might be defending a legal action. So I'm not going to deal with that. I'm just talking about the disputes process that you should have in place. And of course, it can mention those alternative disputes resolution, but again, the idea is to try and resolve things always at the lowest possible level. Now you'll see here our contact details, and also our website, and our contact details on the final page as well. Do contact us. We can help you with developing a disputes resolution, guiding you through maybe a dispute, especially using tools like Stakeholder Mapping. And we also have an ebook on disputes, and you can find that on our web page. So finally, if you found this useful, please press like, share it with people you think may like to hear about this simple approach, and your comments are always welcome, so please make comments too. Thank you.